What's up, college football fans and Mean Green fans? If you're tuning in, Sonoy Valente here once again with the Mean Green Show. Today, joined once again by Eric Henry from SB Nation. And we're going to talk a little bit about NIL and is it really ruining college football or is it not? But before we get into all that, guys, you already know the drill. If you're a fan of college football, G5 football, now NIL, any or all of the above, consider hitting that like and subscribe button because that is truly all that we talk about. Also, if you happen to be a Mean Green fan, I'm going to link the interview in the description below. But Eric Henry and who is your co-host, Eric?
That would be the one and only Joe Londergan.
Joe Londergan. Okay, they did a great interview with Coach Luttrell and really got him to open up in a lot of ways that we as Mean Green fans know he doesn't do all the time. So it's a really good vulnerable look into what Seth Luttrell has to say and his thoughts on the upcoming season. Okay. Well, hey, Eric, thank you so much for jumping on with me. And I guess, we can just jump right in here to it. So NIL. All right. So Jordan Addison, he's pretty much like the big buzzword right now when it comes to NIL, the Biletnikoff Award winner from Pitt, who is the rumor is, he's got a $3 million NIL deal on the table if he goes to USC. Again, nothing's confirmed. And as we're taping this, I don't think there's been any commitment here. Or he hasn't committed anywhere as of yet. And I guess where people are starting to get sour grapes, whether you're a Pitt fan or maybe just a college football fan, is I guess there was allegedly, this deal might have been framed up before he was in the portal, or was there, this buzzword of tampering? Was that going on? And, the first question I just want to propose to you and hear your thoughts on the matter. And I'll probably go back and forth with you a little bit here, but I mean, do you think the NCAA needs to put some guidelines on NIL? And if so, how would they even do that at this point? I feel like the genie's out of the bottle. Are they going to go back and audit everybody? And then if they find people that, okay, you did something wrong, what are they going to do to that? Because there's not any guidelines really yet. And I mean, if they did that, so does that mean, the people that have done X amount of whatever is wrong, quote unquote, they just got away with it, and now that the people that haven't done anything wrong, they don't get to play by those rules because now there are guidelines. I know that's kind of wordy, but what are your thoughts on the whole guidelines? Do you think there should be any, and how would they do that if you think there should be any at all?
So here's the thing, and first off, appreciate you having me on again as always, and appreciate the compliments on our interview with Seth Luttrell. Really enjoyed talking to Coach Luttrell about the Mean Green. So of course I'll give you that shout out. This is the Mean Green Show. But as to your question about NIL, first off, I would love to see. I would just kick back, grab a soda and some popcorn, and I would love to watch them go back and try to audit these people from before. Like that would just be pure entertainment to me to see that go into place, right? But let's break it down piece by piece. Let's talk about the situation with the receiver from Pitt and the situation where it appears, right? Nothing been confirmed, but it appears as if this NIL offer may have been lined up from prior to his entering the portal, right? And I would put it back to you in this sense. We all know tampering has been happening since tampering in multiple forms has been happening in college athletics for a while, but now it's just been ramped up with the onset of the transfer portal. It's just the way it is. I cover FIU football. I don't think this player would mind because this has been reported from 2 years ago. Jose Borregales, kicker with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, been on their practice squad, was formerly of FIU, began his career there, spent 3 years there. And it was written in a story. I believe Andrea Adelson is the author of that from ESPN. If I said the wrong author, I apologize. But talk about how it all began, his transfer from FIU to Miami, with the eyes emoji in his DMs. Like, we see you. And yeah, of course they saw him because he made kicks to help beat Miami, right? So listen, in terms of the tampering, that's been going on really, again, for a while. And with the transfer portal, it's just ramped up. NIL has just made it on steroids, where it's like, hey, and now not only can we say, hey, you want to go from a G5 to a P5 or from a lesser, I don't want to say lesser known because Pitt's a strong ACC school, but you want to go to a bigger school. Now we have the financial backing. And it's why I said 3 years ago that the transfer portal, even before NIL, would eventually look like free agency in some form or fashion. We're here. Cat's out of the bag. Now you ask me in terms of do I think does there need to be some sort of regulation? The answer to that is yes. Just for really all parties involved, the kids' sake. We talked about it a little bit last time I was on. I believe we talked about the last time I was on your show in terms of the young man Isaiah Wong from Miami, the basketball player who, said, "Hey, I'm going to enter the portal by May 1st unless we get this, this, and this." A reason I say from the kids' perspective is they have to know when you sign an NIL deal, depending on who's facilitating that deal and so on and so forth, you're signing a legally binding contract, right? This isn't Madden. This isn't the pros. We're like, yo, year one, I outperform my contract. I'm ready to renegotiate. Like, you sign that deal, ain't really no way out of it. Unless to bring it all the way back around, if you have someone from another school who is saying, hey, what's your NIL deal at your current school? 50 grand? Okay, we'll work with whoever that is and we'll pay 50 plus a penalty fee, right? To get you out of it, to get you here. Unless you have that lined up, that is a very tricky situation that for the kids' sake, there needs to be some sort of regulation. Mm-hmm. For the schools, it's point blank, cut and dry, right? Like, it's just going to be open season on players no matter where it is. It just is going to be a matter of money talks, BS walks. We know that situation. So all in all, I mean, I hope that's not too long-winded of an answer, but in essence, this has been going on for a while, and there is a need for some sort of regulation. Now, what that looks like, again, I'd love to see the NCAA try to go back retroactively and do this because that's just going to be entertaining as hell. But going forward, there is a need to try to establish, hey, this is a period of when you can and cannot enter the portal and be eligible, kind of like a dead period as you have with recruiting. And then also some stipulations on how you go about NIL and the collectives. And I'm sure we'll get into all of that as, we finish up the rest of this segment.
Okay. And, I think the law of the NIL land right now is you can't pay some, a student athlete for their performance from the standpoint of, oh, you rush for 1,000 yards, you get this into, I think that is a thing, but do you think maybe we could see like, okay, you get a $50,000 NIL deal, but this hypothetical number and everything, you get 25,000 of it, August 28th, and you get the other 25,000 of it, May 3rd, after the portal, assuming you stay. So you get your first half of your NIL deal for the season essentially, and you get that second half after the portal window closes, I guess. I mean, do you think we might see some deals like that? Do you think that would even make sense for maybe the donors involved in offering that NIL deal? I mean, what are your thoughts on that hypothetical scenario?
I personally wouldn't be a fan of it. I think you got to kind of set a hard value at, listen, you hit the nail on the head. What NIL was supposed to be was name, image, and likeness. In essence, a firsthand class at marketing of knowing what your market value is for what you bring to the table. Now, that's not all constituted and tied up in your performance on the field, right? Again, I can't remember if I talked about it with you. I know I've talked about it in some other forums. I use the Cavender twins who transferred from Fresno State to Miami as an example. You have two highly touted female basketball players, twins, who began their career at Fresno State, signed $250,000 NIL deals the night that NIL was approved at midnight with Boost Mobile. They're all conference players. They've now chosen to transfer to Miami. I want to say this delicately here, Sonoy, but based on certain factors that allow them to market themselves,
sure,
Miami is a much better location for them for marketing purposes than Fresno, right?
Sure.
But that has nothing to do with their on-court performance. That has to do with purely what they are able to market themselves, right?
Right.
And that is supposed to be the spirit of what NIL is. Terrell Pryor wants to go sell his jersey so he can get money for tattoos. Cool. Player X wants to go be, I'll use Middle Tennessee State as an example, wants to be the Ascend Federal Credit Union player of the game. Fine, right? But I don't think, to bring it back to your question, I don't know that that'd be productive is to say, hey, because then you start getting in the sense of, I'll give you what this could end up being like, is like performance bonuses, where it's like, hey, if you're with us at this point in time, right, then you get the other 25 grand. If you're only with us for this, then you get this. And then it's a very tricky winding road. So I'd love to see them really hone into the marketing aspect of this and make sure that the deals are being done in that sense.
Yeah. Okay. Could you see? Okay. And I know, and I get where they're coming from. And maybe in the beginning, I was slightly in that mindset, not really, but maybe a little bit. But I definitely get, maybe a generation or two up from us of they really don't like the NIL. I mean, they really don't. I mean, they're very against it of, this, that, and the other. And I get where they're coming from as far as the purity of college sports. But again, I mean, these kids, yeah, they're quote unquote amateurs, but they're really not, especially, football wise. So what I'm getting at is, okay, Jordan Addison, the Pitt wide receiver who's kind of sparked a lot of talk recently. I mean, a lot of kids have through this segment or through this transfer portal season, if you will, but Jordan Addison, I guess, is the latest to do such. Again, won the Biletnikoff Award, but I would say even your slightly above casual college football fans probably didn't really know about a receiver at Pitt, even though he won that award. But it's really Heisman Trophy, and I couldn't even tell you who wins this, that, and the other. And there's so many awards. I mean, it's really, I watched the Heisman ceremony, and that's pretty much about it. So now everybody seems to know him because of this NIL deal, potentially, right? That's on the table. So, I mean, do you think the NCAA could benefit from that, though? I mean, I know this is kind of a taboo saying, but isn't there a saying of like, there's no such thing as bad publicity. There's only good publicity, whether it's negative or positive, it's still good publicity. And what I'm getting at is, do you think this could help TV ratings at the same, wherever he goes to USC or maybe Texas, or if he ends up at Alabama? Do you think people are like, oh man, even the guys that and women that are not a fan of this, like, whatever, they like, well, he went to USC. Let's see what happens. I mean, do you think there might be a boost in the TV ratings because of this? I mean, do you have any thoughts on that?
I hate to stonewall your question, Sonoy, but here's why I believe that won't happen. It's a very fair hypothetical you raise, right? Which is essentially what you're saying. And I know the traditional college football fan won't like this, but player X signed a 2-year, $60 million deal to sign with the Lakers. Can he get them over the top? So that's essentially what you're getting at, right?
Right.
ESPN, ABC, the broadcast partners of college athletics would never lean into that narrative. At the collegiate level,
sense.
They would never lean into that narrative.
Yeah.
So while you're not wrong in the hypothetical, it takes two to tango in that regard. That would be, the people who broadcast the game saying, "Hey, Jordan Addison would sign," or I said sign. There you go. Transferred to USC, and he earned this huge deal and whatnot. They'd never lean to that narrative.
Yeah. Okay. So, and it's probably already being used if we're being honest behind, I mean, who knows in these meeting rooms whenever coaches are interviewing for a spot or trying to get, or when the AD is trying to recruit a certain coach from another place. But do you think it might just become more of a publicized, not so much a taboo thing of, hey, like, OU, we have all these things, I mean, before NIL, obviously a coach, if they're a G5 coach and they get offered to go coach at OU, 95 probably plus % would take that job, right? Because of the resources, the money they get, from them personally. But do you think it might just become like another step in, okay, we have these facilities, you'll get this salary as a coach, this, that, and the other, and this many staff and this resources for recruiting and whatever, as well as we have a annual budget dedicated. I don't think anything's to this yet, but we're moving at a rapid pace here. So 24 hours, it could be a totally different world, but they maybe just use it as a recruiting pitch to get a coach of. And for the football team, you have you have a $10 million annual budget for NIL that is kind of is an aid to you. I know the coaches can't use that and they can't pitch that legally, but again, I mean, I'm sure there's some conversations between multiple head coaches and multiple NIL collectives of, yeah, that guy's good. You know what I mean? That guy, we really want that guy. And, then it's up to the NIL collective to kind of all right, well, how does X amount of thousand or million sound to said recruit? But anyway, I know that was kind of a roundabout, but do you think maybe that could be a thing as far as, yeah, and OU's working with a 10 million NIL annual budget? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Players are always going to be enticed by those things, right? And to your hypothetical, I don't think there's any doubt that the larger schools that have the funds to provide certain NIL deals through collectives, right? And it doesn't take, excuse me, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to go, if you're a kid who's 18, 19 years old, maybe you began your career at UTEP, right? And I'll use this player as an example only because his head coach came on and gave us the explicit reason why he left. So I can state that first and then go with hypothetical. Jacob Cowan, the receiver who left from UTEP, went to Arizona. We had Dana Dimmel on the podcast, and he came on and said, hey, look, the reason Jacob left is because he's from Arizona. He has a young child back there. He came to us and said, if Arizona or Arizona State offer, I'm gone. Otherwise, I'm staying here because that's the third closest school to where I'm from. Arizona offered, he went back home, right? But let's just throw out the hypothetical that he wanted to, Arizona has a higher budget, right? Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any doubt that any player is going to be enticed by that, and those things won't play a factor. So where I think there, and we can bring it back to the conversation of regulation a little bit, where it's going to get tricky and where I will be personally focused to see where the NCAA kind of falls on this is, yes, the Oklahomas, Ohio States, et cetera, of the world may have $10 million collectives and also have people who are willing to donate to the athletic program. But that's not every school. And that's where I think that's going to start getting tricky. And maybe it'll kind of, I don't want to say level the playing field, but it'll knock things down a little bit, right? Because, and for your listeners who may not kind of follow what I'm saying here, you got to remember, if you donate to a collective, that's to the collective. That's not to the university, right? So the money from to the collective is not going to build new locker rooms at UNT at Apogee Stadium or new weight rooms and so on and so forth, right? That's money set aside for the players or the collective that if you donate X, you can get Y. And that's where I think there's going to be an opportunity to level the playing field because the NCAA is going to have to step in. ADs are not going to be happy with this. Presidents are not going to be happy with this. They're going to say, hey, I'm losing out on 50, 60, 65% of my donorship base because they want free access to practices, and I can't provide that at my school, but the collective can. So again, I think all in all, and so I'm not shocking you when I say this. The NIL situation was kind of thrown out there without any real safety net, any real, idea of how we're going to go through this. It'll level out a little bit. I'm not going to say the money won't be there. The money's going to be a factor. It's just part of what it is. But things will kind of fall back and we'll figure out how they're going to go about this in a way that all parties can win.
Do you think we may see some roster management from the NIL collectives like that of a GM in the NFL if they're working with, let's say, a G5 school, maybe they're working with an annual budget of $100,000. And do you think they're going to, okay, we got to pay, QB1 $40,000 because he's a big time player and he could go somewhere and we got to try to keep him here. And that leaves us 60 to kind of spread around, maybe two more players on offense, the rest on defense type of thing. I mean, do you think we're going to see something like that? Or do you think, is that just kind of too out there?
No. Listen, if you had said 10 years ago, we'd be telling what we're talking about now. Someone would have said we're too out there, right? But you hit the nail on the head. I had a veteran Group of 5 athletic director reach out to me. We had a conversation about NIL and some of the nuances about it. And he said one of his biggest fears was that people at his school, they donate $100,000, right, to the collective. Mm-hmm. And it said to that donor, if we get this quarterback at insert school, that puts us over the top. Mm-hmm. And then that quarterback gets to insert school and he's not the starter. And then your donor says, well, wait a minute. Why did you see where I'm going with that? So
I do.
You're not far off at all when you talk about that roster management, because that's essentially what you could be looking at.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So, let's say the NCAA steps in. I know this is just totally a guess. I mean, who knows? But what could they do? I mean, could they try to make it okay? You can only do NIL deals with players that are on said team that you are unaffiliated with, right? Um, I mean, you can't offer anything unless they are signed on the dotted line and they're in the program. I mean, do you think that's how they'll frame it? How do you think they could put the guidelines on here?
If I had a foolproof answer for that, I probably wouldn't be reporting. I'd be working for the NCAA. However, this is just an idea that comes to mind. In the National Football League, there is a free agency period, right? Now, of course, you can sign free agents, throughout the years, also, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
The same thing with the NBA. There's we've heard stories about, I don't know how big of an NBA fan you are, but we've heard stories of like them waiting for a high profile signee a free agent at his doorstep at 11:59, and then midnight hits and they're at his door, right?
Right.
You're going to have to in my mind, this is open season from point X to point Y. And then from there, it's locked down.
Mm-hmm.
And then just like and it's like you have dead periods in recruiting, you have to have a dead period in NIL where it says, all right, there's no more tampering with players, no more transfer players. This is your period where if you want to dole out NIL deals, I'll make this clear. I'm not saying you can't transfer. So if you want to dole out NIL deals to players that are not on your roster and they go through the process of transferring, getting approved, getting accepted to your school, so on and so forth, and they get an NIL deal, fine. But from point X to point Y, that's it. And after that, we lock it down until the next year.
Okay. And I know I said this was going to be a 10-minute video, but we're going a little. I've got two more questions for you.
No,
okay.
Let's go. Yeah.
So one being, let's say, we get these regulations, these guidelines, and there's you can't tamper anymore or whatever. How are they ever going to monitor? And I'm just using USC as an example here because they're the kind of, buzzword right now. A Caleb Williams or whoever the QB is or whatever, personally contacting said wide receiver, right? And just like, before he's in the portal, like, hey man, yeah, really big fan of your game. I would love to ever play with you, man. If you're ever considering getting in the portal, man, I would, I just speaking for myself, love to play with you, right? And of course, that quarterback would probably have had conversations with his head coach. And how could they ever put guidelines or how could they ever monitor? I mean, because to my knowledge, you can be friends and reach out and try to be buddy with as a college football player with any college football, right? So like, how do you feel? Because I feel like that's kind of like the loophole that I'm not necessarily mad at it. I'm just saying I just think that's what's going on and that's the life that we're currently living in, and I think it's kind of adapt or die. But how do they monitor that?
You're not wrong. I don't think there's the only thing I can put forth is this: you can monitor it. Like you can't. I'm in South Florida. One of the things that made America upset about the big three coming together, LeBron, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, was that seemingly they had planned this didn't just organically happen in the offseason, right?
Mm.
Like this is something they'd kind of been planning from the Team USA years. The only real thing I can really put forth is saying, hey, if you're caught, we're going to sanction the hell out of you.
Mm-hmm.
If in the NBA, if you're caught tampering, and again, that's such a hard thing to prove. I sometimes see fines of $500,000, $1 million, $2 million, so on and so forth. That's the only thing I can really put forth because, as you said, you can't stop 18 and 19-year-old kids from being friends.
Okay. Last question. Hypothetically, let's say, Eric Henry, you become the head football coach of a new G5 program. Maybe they came up from the FCS and you're the new coach and the buzz is all around Coach Henry, right? And you have your funding, again, coming from the FCS ranks is minimum to none as far as donor involvement, just very minuscule. Then you have a donor come up. And again, this is G5 football we're talking about. So I'm not saying, this isn't going to break the bank, but this would be something in the G5 rankings. And you have a donor coming and saying, hey, I want to donate $200,000 to this football program. Would you prefer me to donate that to your department so you can build said facilities, or to this NIL collective to, again, you can't use it as the head coach, right? But it'll help you tremendously if you have a $200,000 NIL budget to work with in helping you get some of these. And you're not, with that $200,000, of course, you're not going after the Jordan Addisons of the world or the Quinn Ewers, but you're going after those, those mid 3-star guys that could go to, a Memphis or whatever the case may be. If you're trying to win, that's the only thing you're trying to do. What would you do with that 200,000?
That's an easy answer for me. And again, I'll just defer to some of the head coaches we had on the podcast. Some of them have been very open saying, hey, look, in the landscape that we're in with the NIL and transfer portal, A, we have to re-recruit our players every year, but B, we're almost looking at it as if we're getting kids. It's a 2-year proposition instead of 4 years. 2 years, and then they may be out the door. So to bring it back to answer your question, I would take the money and invest in my facilities. Here's why. If I am at the G5 level, right, and we have it's not, I'll use my alma mater, the University of Central Florida, where they're graduating to the Big 12. There's always going to be bigger and better. So you gave me $200,000. Let's say I do that and I entice, quick math here, 17 kids at $25,000 a piece, right?
Mm-hmm.
And let's say out of those 17, 7 of them exceed that $25,000 value, whatever you want to formulate that as.
Mm-hmm.
School X is going to be there tomorrow to go give them 100, and we'll lose them, right? So give me the facilities all day, every day. The facilities are much more sustainable. And we're talking about just football. I'm a football head coach, right? I'm not a coach or everything, but an athletic director. But those facilities are much more sustainable you've seen it. The group of 5 schools that have had the most success, for the most part, have been those that have had outstanding facilities and have had the ability to attract talent in that way. I'd rather try to attract my talent in that regard, get them for the 2 years, knowing that, hey, I may lose them regardless, as opposed to putting this money in a collective and they're walking in and they're like, oh man, this is a glorified high school weight room.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's a great point. That is a really great point. All right, Eric. Well, here we are pushing 30 minutes, 3 times what I recruited you with. But thank you so much for your time. And real quick, where can everybody find you at and what you do?
My man, always got time for you. It's not a problem at all, even though I am an hour ahead of you. So you can find my work at Eric C. Henry _ on Twitter. You can find my Conference USA and FIU coverage at Underdog Dynasty on Twitter, underdogdynasty.com, SB Nation's home for Group of 5 football coverage.
All right, Eric. Well, thank you so much for jumping on. Take care, and we'll probably talk sooner than later.
You got it, buddy. Take care.